ngOnChanges. ngOnChanges is a lifecycle hook of a component or directive. First, let us try to understand this with simple use case. Employee details is a component where it displays the employee details when employee ID is provided. Suppose employee details component is used in app component. From the app component, we are passing employee ID. New employee details needs to be shown in employee details component when the new employee ID is passed from the app component. So in employee details component, we need to write some logic to fetch the details of employee by using employee ID passed from the app component. Same logic can be implemented in ngOnInit, but ngOnInit is called only one time when the component is initialized. So always shows the same employee details even if the new employee ID is passed from the app component. So Angular uses ngOnChanges in this case. In this video, we are going to discuss about ngOnChanges in detail. Here in previous example, employee ID is defined as input property in employee details component. So app component can pass employee ID to this employee details component. Basically, ngOnChanges is useful when one or more input properties are defined in the component. And this is called every time when one of the property is changed in the component, and it is called before the ngOnInit. We need to write ngOnChanges method in the component, and within that we need to write the required business logic when the input properties are changed. We can pass optional parameter to this ngOnChanges of type simple changes. Simple changes is an object that contains all the properties and their changes related information. Basically, it will be in key value pairs. Key represents the name of the input property, and value represents the simple change object, and that contains all the changes related information. This simple change object contains three properties: previous value, current value, first change, and one method is first change. Previous value represents the old value, current value represents the new value, first change tells that is it first change or not. Is first change method returns true or false? It returns true if the new value assigned to the specific input property is equal to the first value assigned to that property. Otherwise, it returns false. Let's try to understand this with simple example program. Okay, this is the simple example program which was created by using Angular CLI. I made some changes to save some time. Basically, I have created one employee details component. Here in employee details component, it displays the employee details like ID, name, department, and salary. And these values we are fetching from the EMP property of the employee details component. Okay. Here in employee details component, we defined EMP property of type any. So any type of value can be assigned to this. And we have defined one input property named EMP ID of type string. So when it is used in app component can pass the new employee ID, and that will be assigned to this employee EMP ID. Okay. Here we have defined ngOnInit method. Within that, we have written some logic to fetch the employee details from the employees data.json file. This is the JSON file, and it contains three employees details. Okay, it takes all the information from the employees data.json file, and it will be assigned to EMP list. Now EMP list contains all these three employees information. About this we have discussed in ngOnInit. Kindly watch that video for this to understand. Okay, here instead of fetching the data from the database server, here we are fetching the data from JSON file. Okay, now let us see the app component.html. Here basically it contains one text box where we can give employee ID, and we have given one button. it has the click event. When we click on that, this employee id defined in the input box is passed to that method, and that method basically assign that values to this current emp id. This is the method we have defined. Current emp id is passing to the employee details component. When we click on the specific click event, then that employee id is passed to this, and it is assigned to this current emp id. So every time when the new employee id is typed in the text box, that will be passed to employee details component. Now in employee details component, we need to write some logic to fetch the details of employee by using this emp id. Okay, here for this purpose we use ngOnChanges. Okay, instead of writing the logic to fetch employee details from the database server, we will filter uh, the we will get the employee details from emp list, and we will assign it to emp. So these properties are used in component, and those information will be displayed in component. Okay, let me add that statement here. This dot emp is equal to, we need to filter get it from emp list. For that we need to use find method, where x dot id is equal to this dot emp id passed from the app component. Okay, let us save it and see the output. Let me add emp1, so we can see the details of emp1. If I change it to 2, you can see the 2 third employee details also, we can see it. Okay, here this is the way we can use ngOnChanges. Here we can pass optional parameter of type simple changes. Okay, if this business logic requires the previous value of the specific input property, then any property is required, then we can pass those values, and we can fetch those details, and we can use those details. Okay, suppose here from the changes I want to get the changes related to emp id. Basically simple changes object contains key value pairs. Key is the input property name, so if I want to take it from the changes, we need to use key as emp id, and this type is simple change. Okay, let me give some name. Here we can see emp id change type is simple change, and this contains all the information like previous value, current value, is first property, and is first method. If this business logic requires so those properties, we can use them. Suppose here we are passing this dot emp id, right? Let me modify this by using emp id changes dot current value. So both are same results, because always we are using current value. So suppose if I pass emp01, if I pass 02, same way we are displaying. In this way we can use ngOnChanges uh, in component lifecycle. Here if the business logic requires any further information related to these changes, then we can use the parameter which is passing to ngOnChanges. Thank you.